Tenet is a tad confusing, and sometimes I forget that you aren't all with me for my 2-week research and multi-rewatch of a movie and take it for granted that everyone is at the same place in understanding the movie.
Is your head hurt yet?
Yes.
There are a lot of deep dive explainers on YouTube, but so that my 2-part video is a little more enjoyable, I'm going to break the plot down as absolutely simply and quickly as possible so that the next time you watch it, you can fully enjoy it. The first thing to know is that the protagonist, without doubt, experiences the film chronologically. There are 5 set pieces or main events: opera, Oslo Freeport, car heist, back to Oslo Freeport inverted, and the Stalsk 12 battle. In the protagonist's head, they all happen exactly the way we were shown. Some people thought the opera siege happened in the future, but the Washer puts that debate to rest. The protagonist would have known this was Neil if it had happened after Stalsk 12. The one other bit of important information is that the first 3 set pieces happen because the protagonist, knowingly or unknowingly, is trying to obtain the 9th piece of the algorithm. It's not until after the Talon heist that he realizes the plan all along, his future self's plan, was for Sator to end up with the 9th piece so he'd bring the entire thing together and they could steal it at Stalsk 12. The Opera Siege was a false flag terrorist operation where the Ukrainian government was in control of both sides. They wanted what they thought was plutonium, but ended up being the 9th piece of the algorithm. A handful of CIA operatives, including the protagonist, were undercover with some Russians that turned out to be Sator's men. Their mission was to get the CIA guy out before the terrorists or special forces kill him and blow up the building to cover their tracks. Sator's men turn on the CIA, but because of the protagonist's quick thinking, they don't end up with the algorithm. The Ukrainians do, which sets up the set piece in Talon. The Ukrainians are transporting it to a nuclear storage facility. So the protagonist dies, the pill was fake, and he's inducted into Tenet. The next 30 minutes of exposition are just setting up the players, which ultimately lead to Sator. First, Neil and the protagonist assume that Sator ended up with the 9th piece of the algorithm, and they assume it's at Oslo in the Freeport. Instead, they stumble onto one of his many turnstiles and their future selves. Now the protagonist needs to get to Sator to help him steal the 9th piece of the algorithm from the Ukrainians in Talon. Another key piece of information is that no one tells anyone the full truth, so at this point the protagonist thinks he's trying to get close to Sator to find out what his part in all of this is. But like we already talked about, the truth is that the goal of this mission was always for Sator to end up with the 9th piece. So, mission failed, but also accomplished. Kat gets shot with an inverted bullet, and the only way to heal her is to invert her, so they head back to Oslo inverted where they know they can revert. The protagonist, still really not comprehending how inversion works, expects to find Sator's men inside Oslo. He doesn't, instead he finds an earlier version of himself, and I actually break this down pretty thoroughly in part 2, there's a link in the description with a timestamp if you want more detail. But long story short, the plan works and they all uninvert. They only stay uninverted for less than a day, so the protagonist can talk to Priya one more time, and then they invert again to go all the way back to the 14th, 10 days earlier to the day of the opera. However, they aren't going to Kiev, Ukraine, they're going to Stalsk 12 in Siberia, the day that Sir Michael Crosby said there was an explosion. In the final set piece, they run their own temporal pincer movement, which again is just attacking something from 2 sides. Neil is on the team starting at the end, moving inverted, and Ives and the protagonist are on the forward team. The goal is to let the explosion happen, but pull the algorithm out so that Sator will die thinking he'd succeeded. Kat shoots him anyway, but they do just that, and we get to imagine someone 300 years in the future opening an email with the location of the dead drop, where the algorithm is supposed to be, sending a bunch of goons to Stalsk 12 to dig it up, and then getting really angry when they just find Volkov's bones inside. Oh, and possibly Neil's undecayed body, but don't think about that too much. And that's really it. Neil dies saving the protagonist. A few weeks or months in the future, the protagonist heads back to London to kill Priya before she can kill Kat. Neil says this is part of a bigger temporal pincer movement, but who knows in which direction, since they spend half the movie going forwards in time and half the movie going backwards in time. So now that you are totally up to date and know exactly what happens in this movie, you can go watch part 1 again if you want, and then go watch part 2, because they're like not even that long. I guarantee I found some awesome things that you did not know were in there. And I'll talk about how even thematically the movie is a palindrome. Thanks for watching.